Wonderful. I'm so excited. This is Surrender is a Verb, and I'm here with the beautiful, magical, powerful Fazila Bizior. Before we dive into surrender, I would love for you to just share who you are, who you be, what you do, the magic that you bring to this world, and let everybody get a feel for you.
Thank you for having me, Nikki. It's really such a pleasure, and I'm so happy on the inauguration of your podcast. I know from from my own experience that when you get started, it's such a wonderful thing to see come about. So thank you. So very quickly, I mean, there's so much that I could say, but I want to start with the one thing that has become so meaningful for me is in terms of what my name means. My name is actually, it means benefit from God. And it was so meaningful when I truly connected with the meaning. I'd always known about it, but a wise person sat down with me and said, "Do you really understand the meaning of your name?" And I said, "Well, it means benefit." And they said, "No, it is benefit from God." And that really shook me because I didn't know. I didn't like my name. And I think the reason I bring this up is we reject so many parts of self, and I'll come back to that. But I live in Cape Town, South Africa. Love it here. It's the most magical, beautiful energy. I'll talk about how I ended up in Cape Town because I was actually born in Durban,
Oh, wow.
east coast of South Africa. And I love this whole thing of, for me, the mystical part of being on the edge of the continent. So even now I have this energy coming up, and Africa for me is just home, and it's just so expansive right now. So let's focus, Fazila. Okay. Multi-passionate, multidisciplined, teacher, mentor, author. That dream was realized last year. Intuitive, medium, which I have not spoken about in open forums, and a mentor for self-mastery and awakening. And really what that for me is awakening to I am, because that's what I've also found in these past 2 years is what that means. On my logical side and my structured Capricorn moon, I have a degree in metaphysics. I'm an ordained minister. So it's very, very, very much there's these dichotomies, there's these opposites. I'm a shaman. I've been initiated as a shamanic healer as well. How it all started was just from understanding what else is there. Why am I here? And that was, and I remember this point, 2003, I was sitting in an armchair and I picked up a book, and it was Louise Hay's book of You Can Heal Your Life, because I really wanted to know what else is there to life? Why am I here? And I don't know how I got to it. I can't remember how I was connected to Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, but that was just blew my mind. And it opened my soul up to the fact that when you die, you have the review that happens. And what's going to happen at the review is the life you've lived is the hell and the heaven you've created. Now, at that time, I know from a consciousness perspective, 2003, where we were in terms of our level of consciousness, that we were, for me, my understanding was, oh, I'll only experience and I'll know what it was like, and I'll have an inkling of where things were for me when I die. And I was like, no, I ain't waiting for that. Because the one thing that hit home for me was you will experience how others have experienced you as well, how you've lived, the choices you've made. And so I looked back at that time. I was 32, I think. Yeah, 30. I'm not going to do the math right now. And I looked back and I was like, how the fuck have I lived my life? Like, what have I done? Because if every person that I have interacted with, I am going to experience what they've experienced, amplified, the good and the bad. And I was, okay, all right.
It's a shocking realization. I remember when I had that realization as well. It was like, ooh.
And it just from then on, everything that I consumed, I had this insatiable desire for learning, and I've always been that. For me, learning is a huge thing for me. Understanding how the world works. I want to understand to the point that I can connect the dots, because when I connect the dots, I've often found that if there's a gap for me, then it doesn't feel okay, and it doesn't quite, I don't get the understanding on the intellectual level, and I'm very mind intellectual, but when I get it and I realize how the dots connect, that for me becomes an experiential unfolding within. And I know you know this, because then we literally are connecting with consciousness and the energy of things. And so
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just a very quick question. Is that now what you help your clients with, connecting the dots?
Yes, absolutely. And we've chatted about this because, I've gone out so far, gone and searched in all religions, in different disciplines, in, like I said, shamanic healing, metaphysics. I've looked at how does the mind-body connection work, neuroscience, all of that. And it just became more and more like it came alive for me the more I looked at this. And it was just a metaphor for me from a human perspective and the divine. And initially, like I said, 2003, around that time when I was going through my own awakening, it was, who do I turn to? The information was still very, very much, you had to go looking for it. I chose to go onto to attend many courses. My weekends were spent on, I'm doing a breathwork thing, or I'm doing meditation, or whatever it was. And I soon started to get to this point of, okay, what is that I'm looking outside of me for? Because, and that took many years. I mean, 10 years ago, 2012, when we had this huge awakening on the planet, then I realized, okay, nothing is outside of me. So now then came the inner work, because I was looking outside with angels and crystals and all of that. And I was like, okay. And at that point, the pivotal thing was I was still in the corporate world. So I broke away from the corporate world in 2010, and I took a bit of a sabbatical. However, my husband said, I noticed one thing with you. You have two gears. You're on or you're off, because I went into a whole program, like modalities of aromatherapy, herbology, massage. Well, I can't even remember everything, but must have been about 12 different modules. And I was writing exams until all of that. And then he said to me, I just realized it's not the corporate world, it's you. And so I was like, what do I do with that now? I'll tell you, surrender, Nikki, in terms of the first day that after I had left, and I worked for a big telecoms company here in South Africa with MTN, the yellow company. The first day after I had resigned, I was out of MTN. I got up, I sat on my bed, and I cried. I cried because I didn't know what I was doing, number one. I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I just knew I was out of there. And I used to, in those days, if anybody remembers, Blackberries.
Yes.
My Blackberry would tell me where to go, what to do, who I was meeting with, what projects. And that was like having the rug pulled out from under me, because now this was the first point of, who are you? And what are you going to do? What do you wake up and wait? What are you waking up to? And that for me, for the first month, it was not an easy place to be, because I didn't have many points of references. I didn't know of other people who had done this. I didn't know how to navigate through it. And so I did the next best thing, was focus. And that's what I do really well, is when I know there's something that I want to really get stuck into, my focus, my energy, my passion, and thank the Lord for my husband. He has supported me tremendously. So surrender from his perspective is, you do you. And for then, I will say that as well. I know him on the higher self level. I know, wow, we came together and we've really created something magical. It was not always easy in terms of that path, but we've grown so much. And I'm so eternally grateful that he was someone that did not, he didn't bat an eyelid. He would be like, "Are you going to do what? Oh, okay. Are you sure?" That is what he would ask me.
I have
How are
a
you
quick
going to do this?
question around
Yeah.
all of this because I feel like I was on a similar, I also came from corporate and also left corporate and then was at a stage where I didn't know who I was, what I wanted. And I also, like you, studied multiple modalities. And I think that I know that there are many, many people who will listen to this who can identify with being, let's say, A-type personality, driven, ambitious, wanting to achieve, but also wanting to find out who am I, what is my purpose? And sometimes it's difficult to marry the two. But my question is, when you were doing all the different modalities and studying, was that a part of you that was trying to control? So if we bring this back to surrender, and surrendering being letting go and trusting, then was that, because for me, I don't regret any of it. And I think all of it served me. And I also love learning and I love absorbing and I love all of that. But for me, there was definitely a part of it that was the searching, the searching, the seeking, the seeking, the trying to control. Whereas if I had just gone, perhaps it all would have flowed to me sooner, perhaps not. I'm wondering for you, what do you feel?
So right now, the version of me where I am, I see how it's all served me because, like I was saying, they're parts that I know have connected the dots. And when I work with my clients, I will know that this person is very much driven from the mental energy. And so I'll bring in work around how you change behavioral patterns, how you understand yourself, how do you look at what's going on in your life and your reality so that you can really see where you're creating from. And then I have other clients who really want the energy healing and they want the nurturing, and so they're the emotional beings, my empathic clients, those who will come to me where I do a modality of healing on the body. Even though I'm working on the body, I'm working in all of the other levels and all of in the energy bodies and the emotional, spiritual, mental, and it's a blissful massage. I don't do it often. I only do this now on specific requests because at some point I found that many of my clients were reliant on, imagine lying on a massage bed receiving this and you feel so great.
Sounds magical.
But
I'm ready. Let's go.
I wish I could give myself one of these. So, but I saw that they weren't shifting in their lives. And so now, unless someone's gone through a program with me, because now you have the tools to navigate on your day-to-day basis, then you can actually be reliant on, okay, I want this healing, or I want it, and even with the distance energy sessions, quantum energy work, that for me has just been so expansive, and it's on another level. And I know you do this work as well, Nikki. So you can be in any part of the world. And so what I found is it's given me so much more depth and color. And so
Yes.
when I
And
look at
no, there's
the
no point in regretting anything ever. I don't believe that.
no,
Everything has brought us to the point where we are now.
yes,
So what I'm interested to know is, I would love for you to share a moment of surrender. So sharing a moment when you were trying to control, where you needed to let go, and what transpired and what was on the other side of that. Because there are many people who are going to be listening who understand the concept of surrender. And this is the thing with everything, and as you were sharing so beautifully, is there's the understanding, there's the intellectual understanding and being able to conceptualize, right? I can understand what surrender is, but then there's the actual embodiment of it and actually being able to go, I'm trusting, I'm letting go. And for me in those moments, and I think I'm going to sidetrack here slightly, I think that we experience surrender differently in the sense that sometimes it's a big crash bang when we're not listening. And then we have those moments of surrender where we like drop to our knees and we're like dropping into really just the energy of this. I guess this is a podcast, so I should explain, but dropping into surrendering to something bigger than you, to a higher power, to God, to source, to the universe. But then there's also the daily surrender. And I think that comes just through practice, through being connected, through being aware. We are continually surrendering. But in the beginning, like for me on my journey, I know that now I feel like it's a continual surrender, a daily surrender. But when I was disconnected from the truth of who I am, when I didn't know myself as well as I know myself now, when I was maybe, I don't believe we're ever off track, but at that point, just not quite as aligned as I am now, there was a big explosion in my life that forced me to surrender. So I guess that's what I'm asking, if that has been your experience, or is it more of this slow surrender drip?
Oh no. Being who I am on this multi-dimensional depth of everything. There have been pivotal points in my life in terms of when I really had to give up control. And when my dad was ill. So 2014 was when he had, if you talk about moments of surrender, geez, did it come? In 2014, my dad went on pilgrimage. And so at the time I lived in Johannesburg. For anybody who doesn't know, it's a city of gold, like in kind of the middle of South Africa. My parents live on the East Coast in Durban. It's an hour's flight away. And so my dad and mom were going on pilgrimage, and I grew up in a very traditional Muslim household. I love my family. They are aware beings. And I saw that as well in terms of how they support me. And when they were going on pilgrimage, my dad didn't look okay, and he looked like he'd been struggling. So he kept saying to me, I've got a pinched nerve in my shoulder. And the night before, he was in such pain. And I just said to him, Dad, don't go. Let's rather go to a hospital and we'll check it out and whatever. And he said, no. I said, okay, can we go to the doctor? So we did. The next morning, I took him to a family doctor. And the doctor said, look, I'll strap him up and whatever. He really wants to go on pilgrimage. And I was like, okay, let's see what we need to do. And so when we got home, I begged my dad. I said to him, please reconsider. This is something you can put out for later. We'll make a plan. And my dad looked at me, and it still touches me to this day when he looked in my eyes and he said, let me go. And
wow.
While I stood there, this is the point many people talk about. So many people talk about that definitive moment. And I knew in coming on the podcast, for me, surrender has been like, there have been these key defining moments. And when my dad said, let me go, he was talking to me alone. There were many of my family members in the room, and everything just blurred out. It was him and I, not even standing where we were in the house. And I looked at him and I said, okay, whatever you want. And so he went on pilgrimage. And 2 days later, my dad, I couldn't get hold of my parents. Something was wrong. They left on the Wednesday. By the Friday, I thought I'd give them time to settle and stuff, but I wasn't able to connect with my mom and stuff. Saturday morning, I knew something was up. And then this whole thing started to unfold. And that was where it was very surreal. Finally, my mom called on Sunday night. And she didn't, in fact, my mom called my brother-in-law, and he lives in Durban as well. And he then called me to say, Mom called and I need to let you know Dad had a heart attack. And I was just like, what? I knew something. I knew this was going on. It was not feeling okay. And I really wanted to keep him, in South Africa. And by the way, this was his pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And so this whole thing unfolded. My dad had 2 massive heart attacks. He flatlined twice. He had subsequent another 2. But he stayed. He didn't want to leave. I was on the point of getting him flown out, evacuated, and all of that. And at each point, he was saying, when he was able to get out of hospital, so the pilgrimage lasted over 6 weeks that he was there. He got medical help and all of that, but he insisted on completing his pilgrimage. And I was like, seriously, my moments of surrender was what the fuck.
Yeah.
It was not spiritual. It was, I was going through these times of, I want to fly out, but it was a difficult, and not, let me rephrase, it wasn't difficult, it was not possible for me to go. Being a Muslim woman, I need to go, so the rules are, you have to be accompanied by a family member who's a male. And so what we did was, I couldn't go, but my younger brother stepped up and he said he would go, and so did a brother-in-law of mine. So I come from a huge family. I have 4 siblings, so we're 5 kids. So it's really nice to have all of these, the support system. And so my brother and my brother-in-law went, and we literally had to get visas approved, get my brother's passport approved because his passport he didn't have a valid passport. And every morning, and we did this for 5 days in terms of Dad's in hospital, we've got to get, family members got to go out because they've got to support my mom. And I would go, like, every morning, get up, I went to the Saudi embassy, I went to Home Affairs. We were doing this, like, these trips, and my brother-in-law and my brother were with me. And what we achieved was beyond anything, because I would just wake up and say, please, guide me through this. All I know is I've got to get him there. And so we did. And there's for the next 4 years. So my dad came back. He then went into hospital here in South Africa, and the doctor gave me a prognosis. And so at each moment in time, I had to keep reminding myself, I said to my dad, I'd support him no matter what. So those were big moments of surrender and mini moments as well. And through that time of my dad's post-pilgrimage, he came back and he was a changed person. The conversations I had with him at 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes were beyond anything. I was having conversations with my dad about spirituality and consciousness and Islam and Christianity and God and stuff I'd never spoken to him about before. And I mean, it was such a gift. And that for me is what surrender brings, because I couldn't do nothing. It taught me I had no control of anything outside of me. It was always inside. Another big part that I experienced was like knowing, I had already known, like 2017, my dad was deteriorating. And there would be moments when I'd get a phone call from a family member, my brother, we'd have a WhatsApp group, and they would say, Dad's in hospital. And so it'd be like, okay, what do I do? And so I was flying between Joburg and Durban on a monthly basis. I remember the one morning, I'm lying in my bed and I'm like, okay, I just need to work through what's coming up right now. And I had, call it a vision, because I'm empathic and I'm very, very much the clairsentience, the clear knowing and all of that. I feel stuff in my body. I had this message drop in, but I felt it in my body. And the message was, your dad's going through an initiation. Death is an initiation. and it touches every part of your life. He is here teaching you and everyone else who is available. And that for me is what surrender is about. Are you available? It's the presence. And I was stunned. And the message for me was, the learning out of this was, you are here to expand through this as well. So you can either look at this and feel only sorrow and the pain, or you can look at the growth that your father has initiated. He's going through his journey. He'll go through it. How will you come out at the end of this? And that for me gave me strength. Yeah, there were, the tears and stuff, but I felt just a dropping away. And for me, that's that letting go part of, okay, I know I'm going to have to walk this path. And whatever happens, Dad is transitioning. There's no easy way to, or pretty way to change this. And yes, it's going to get tough from here on in, because whatever I thought we'd gone through, it got tougher. And eventually, when Dad did pass, on the night that I eventually flew down to Durban to be with family, the grief that was going through me in waves, and I had done a lot of grief work, because they talk about complex grief when the family member is in transition, is terminally ill, whatever that may be. And there's anticipatory grief as well. So I knew, and I'd been working with all of this, but I remember I walked in to the room with my sisters, because I couldn't adjust. They'd performed all the last rites with my dad. So the last part of it, Muslim burials happen really quickly, within a couple of hours of the passing. I went into the room and my sisters were with me, and I could feel grief coming up. And I realized, if I hold on to this, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to let it go. And I then lay on the floor and I told them, don't touch me. And I let this just come up. I was writhing on the floor with pain, but I needed, at that point, I needed to let this come through, because it was a part of me that had always been in such fear of a loved one who had passed, because it had been years since my grandparents had passed. So no one significant until my dad. And so I was able to then, as I let that go, I was able to compose myself and then realize, okay, you're here, not for now, you're going to support others. And so I was there for my mom and my sisters. But as I was sitting that night with just doing the prayers, but I was sitting in very deep thought, I went back to that day when my dad was leaving for pilgrimage. And when he said, let me go, the message came through again and again. And I looked at all the ways I had to let him go. He asked me at that point, in the next 4 years, you have to let me go in many ways. And then I also realized why it was so important for him in terms of his pilgrimage. So in the Islamic tradition, when a person completes their pilgrimage, there's a different level of rites that are performed for them. And that's what he always wanted. And I sat that day and I said to my brother, like, I'm so in awe of our family in terms of what my dad's wishes were. Those were carried out, no matter how difficult the journey was. And I said to him, I realized the wisdom of what he asked. And the fact that we could do this as a family has meant there's been so much growth and expansion. And yes, as a family, we got lots of stuff. We've had lots of stuff, but it was those points of the support, knowing that you're not alone. Because I've always by then I would connect into source, and I would connect with my guides and God. But I was also very much like, how do I do this? Because God, you're not here, right down here with me in front of me. And I soon realized God was all around me, holding me. And that's what, when you talk about that, there's the big bang, but there's also this major, major feeling of being so held and so carried and always loved. It reminded me of footprints. When you see the one set of footprints in the sand and you realize those were not your footprints. And so, yeah, that like that in itself was just, it feels like lifetimes of learning.
Yeah.
Feels like integration on such a deep level. So yeah, surrender has come in so many forms, and it's asked of me, what will you do?
I just want to take a moment to just reflect back to everybody who's listening, because that was a beautiful story, a beautiful sharing, beautiful experience. And so thank you for being so open and for sharing so openly, and for everybody to hear your story, because it's very personal.
Mhm.
I just want to take a moment to thank you.
Yeah.
And thank your dad, because
Mhm.
indirectly, he's now helping everybody who's listening too. And just share, as you were sharing, some moments that came through for me, and just some, I guess, golden nuggets or lessons that people now who've heard the story can maybe just draw on and take comfort in. Because I think that death is, I know for me, when my mother passed away, and in fact, it was a journey for me as well, because my mother
Mhm.
was an alcoholic. And so there were various times in my life where I thought my mother was going to pass away, and
Yeah.
various episodes of grieving. And
Mhm.
she was a fighter, and came back, let's say, many times. And I think for me, my mother was also a very big teacher when it comes to surrender, teaching me to surrender. Because
Mhm.
for a large part of my life, I tried to control my mother's drinking, and in that way control her, because all I wanted was for her to have peace and to be free of this disease. But of course, it was her journey. And if I had just let her be, as your dad said to you, if I had just let her be, it would have brought me peace a lot sooner, and would have given her the space to experience her journey, which is her journey. And so I think that surrender teaches us to allow our loved ones to simply be who they are, to see them as who they are, to love them for who they are, accept them for who they are, and just let them be. We cannot control somebody else's journey. So I think that was came through when I was listening to you. And then also the moment when you said that your dad said to you about being open to, or being available for.
Yeah, that was the message that came through. Can you be available to your growth and your expansion?
Yes.
And the other thing, I don't think I said this. The question was, can you love him through all of his choices, regardless of what he chooses? And and that for me was a very powerful thing, because seeing him in ICU at times, and there were times he said to me, why didn't you just let me go? Like, and I did not know that from a medical perspective, doctors actually will always choose, even if you have a do not resuscitate, because I looked into this. If you have a DNR as your last wish, doctors will still resuscitate you if they know that you're still fully functioning, and they'll bring you back. If you're going to have a heart attack, there is going to be that level of support available.
Right.
And so it was really like being in that space of, okay, yet again, how much do I love you, that you are, you're still here, but I don't want to let you go. But if you want to go, I'm going to have to be okay with that. So yeah, it's such a, oh, yeah, it's powerful. It's so powerful to,
It is powerful. And when we are in that moment of losing someone, whether it's before or after grieving someone,
mm,
it's very difficult to be able to zoom out and to look
yeah,
down and see that this is all part of the divine plan, that this is serving, that this is their path that they chose, and this is
Yeah.
your path that you chose to be in this journey, and that it is just a transition or an initiation, as you described it, and that they are and will be always with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love how this is such a big part of your journey. And also how you have this gift of being a medium, because that connects people on the earth plane with their loved ones. And that in itself is a gift. So I find it interesting that you have this beautiful story and this beautiful gift. Well, I find it, of course you do.
I'm laughing right now because I've resisted that. I resisted actually wanting to, to say that I was a medium. And my dad, in and of its own self, like he just opened me up to, there was no place for me to like hide. That was the other thing. That those places, whenever I thought I could take comfort, I couldn't, because even through his transition in that last year in 2017, I had my full-time practice, and there were times I'd have no clients, and I couldn't hide in my work because I love the work I do. And so again, when you talk about surrender, it just the layers and it's an initiation, it's a test. It's how, are we going to repeat the patterns of how you've always done it? Or do you take the opportunity this time and say, hey, what can I do different here? And now, I mean, it's just, I'm in so much like gratitude. I'm gonna be very blunt here. It was fucking difficult at the time. I swear, I'm spiritual and yet I swear. My husband says
Love
it's like
it.
a sailor. Anyway.
Love it.
But it was gut-wrenching. There were times I did and if anybody knows Eat, Pray, Love, I did my whole thing of go and sit in the garden and scream. Scream because I had no other way to deal with the pain. And my pets, 5 of them, would sit around me in a circle and they'd be looking at me like, what is going on? But they also knew they'd be there. I'd be crying and crying, and then I'd fall asleep on the ground. So it was that the real rawness of it. It was like nothing. I feel like I'm between heaven and earth. The earth has shattered beneath me and the sky has opened. It's dramatic, because what do you do with so much pain? And
Yeah.
yet I realized, fuck it. I am just going to scream. And I find for me, there are times when there is this primal scream because your human is feeling so much. The soul is saying, let it out, because this is like, if anybody has done ayahuasca, you'll know that you throw up. And the reason you throw up is because you take the medicine and your healing is when you throw it up.
Mm.
And so the soul is saying, you've got the pain. What is it going to take? When is enough enough? When are you going to let it go? And sometimes it's doing that. No matter who's going to hear you. And I had neighbors all around me, and I was like, I couldn't give a shit right now.
Right.
I'm sitting with this. If I and this has been the valuable thing for me, is I get to this point and I realize I have a choice here. If I hold this in, it's going to go deeper and it's going to take a lot longer before I come out of it. So what do? Then I will push. I then sit with myself and I'd be like, okay, let's do this. And that's what it's brought about, is that resilience to realize that fear, which is paralyzing and it can feel so much bigger than us, is just asking to be let out. It's asking to be recognized and acknowledged that, hey, I feel fearful, but I have the support. There are many wonderful people who've supported me through during the time of my dad's transition and the illness and all of that. And I should even not say illness, because for me, as I sit here, it's greatness. For a soul to come through and facilitate that with others. My dad even took me into my past lives with him. Like, I was standing in the room with family members, his my extended family. And I could see the lifetime I spent with my dad in Egypt, lying on the bed, and he's saying to people, I'm letting you know how I'm feeling, etc. And I got that it was another lesson he was concluding here. And so I've been really like in awe of how what I've been gifted with and what I've been able to work through. Because what we talked about in the beginning, I fucking refuse to take this with me ever.
So
Anything beyond this.
what I'm picking up, which I think you're putting down, is it's definitely a sense of purging,
Yeah.
a sense of release. And I completely resonate with that in terms of my own journey of surrender, because what I've experienced is that in those moments where you just let it all out, however you choose to do that, what happens afterwards is there is, for me personally, what I've experienced, there is stillness,
Oh, yeah.
there is peace. And then, and this brings me back to your dad's, or the message that you received about, are you available for it? Is then you start receiving the guidance clearly. And what I found is it can be instantaneous. So it's almost like this journey that's led you to this purge and this release, and then there's this moment of peace. And as I'm sharing this, I mean, I'm saying a moment, it may be days, it may be hours, it may be seconds, but it feels like this beautiful moment of peace and stillness. And then it's like you've opened the floodgates to beautiful ideas and synchronicities and opportunities, and things start flowing in. It's almost like it's putting you into your most aligned state of being, where you are then naturally magnetizing your realities of what is here for you. And it's those moments where I've downloaded a program and then just run with it. And if you're listening to this, that's why it's so important, as Fazila was sharing, to allow yourself to go through that, to sit with it, and not to allow it to get deeper, to take that opportunity to shift directions. And it isn't always, but it can be incredibly fast, that shift.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with you, Nikki. When it could take years to get through to the breakthrough, but then everything that happens thereafter is just like, wow, just keeps firing. So yeah, some things are just so resistant to shifting, and then you have this opportunity. And that for me was when and I knew we were going to talk about surrender. It comes down to that it's a defining moment. And I've realized as well now, what I've been seeing is turning the defining moment into a creative moment.
Yes.
Because that is I am, that is God. It's the creative moments. And you can have the big creative moment, but then every day is a creative moment. And so from the time that you wake up to when you go to sleep, if you looked at each point, am I going to, if I want to like stop drinking coffee, it's a creative moment, because who I choose right now then leads to the next moment and the next one. And then it leads to the next week, month, year, because of that one moment. And so it's, again, I'm so grateful to be here, present at this time, at this space, in the level of consciousness and expansion that we're in. Because what you're talking about now, we don't have to go through years and years and years. If you make the choice and you say, I'm here for it, it may feel like it's big, but I'm seeing shifts happen in days.
Yeah.
I'm seeing shifts happen in hours. And I've experienced shifts happen like, oh, I just realized that is how I want to see this anymore. And then we talk about, parallel realities, quantum jumping. That's been happening. It's been shifting into the reality of, I let it go. I let all of that go. I surrender all of that. It drops to the wayside because I'm choosing to be in a different space. And then what do you see? You see that your reality is actually transformed because you've moved up into the consciousness of that person who is at that level, who has all of that. And that is like it's like it blows my mind that we're experiencing this.
I know, it's incredible. And I just want to quickly add to that, since you brought up parallel realities, because I'm really in the energy of that at the moment. And what I have experienced in the last couple of months is, I think you joined me in tapping into timelines originally. So that was the first level of parallel realities that I downloaded, the understanding that there are multiple timelines, which is beautiful because it gives us the freedom to explore in the energy of joy and not feel like there's only one path for us, that there are many paths and there's not a right or wrong. It's just beautiful experiences that we get to have in this lifetime. But what parallel realities has brought in, even if you just connect into the word realities, timelines to me feels like it's still linear and it's still a place that we're trying to get to. We're manifesting something that is ahead of us. Whereas parallel realities, as you know, everything already exists. It's already here. And the connecting point for me, when you talk about connecting the dots, for me, the connection point that really helped me ground this was that I've started tapping into and connecting to who I am, the I am presence, and feeling who I am in a very deep way and seeing myself in different realities. So seeing different versions of me in different realities. And in some of those realities, I am so deeply embodied, so deeply comfortable with who I am, so at peace. There's no searching, there's no looking for, there's just being in the joy of the moment. And then seeing all of these different realities and seeing and understanding and feeling how in all of these parallel realities that already exist, the essence of who I am is the same. It's always the same. And from that perspective, how this helps, if anyone's listening and you're interested in manifestation, is that it's not trying to connect to a future version of you. It's you now. You are already that magical person. You already hold all of those qualities. And when you experience that through parallel realities, you're then experiencing it. You're experiencing a parallel reality that already exists. So then you're able to hold that energy. That was a complete sidetrack off of surrender is a verb, but it came through. So there we go. This is all about having juicy conversations. Okay, Fazila, I'm going to have to wrap this up, but it's been such a joy chatting to you. And I would love for you to share what you are working on in your business at the moment. Where can people find you? Share the juiciness of your glorious business that is here and how you can support people.
So what has come up front and center has been a lot around forgiveness. And one of the things that, as in my work, as I said, I deal with clients who have deep trauma. They come to me to help them heal. I deal with people who just need to change certain things in their life. So one of the things that I've seen the commonalities around is forgiveness, which is, and it's not in the religious biblical sense. Forgiveness really is I would say it's surrender is very much a part of this, because to forgive is to give forth. And I started to work with forgiveness a year ago, and then I had this interaction, and I had guidance coming from Madiba, Nelson Mandela, had a whole download about the inner work and forgiveness, and how we really, because I had been having these issues around holding pockets of resentment, which then I wasn't comfortable to talk about it. But I realized COVID gave me this gift to look at where I'd been holding stuff and I wasn't moving forward. And all of this, how it comes together is whatever we hold in terms of the lower harmonics. I don't want to call emotions like anger and fear and whatever as bad. It's not. It's showing us something, showing us opportunities for growth. And so I'm now working with a group of people in a container called the Bridge of Forgiveness. And I see this as the inner work. If I had to tie it all up in a neat little bow, it would be bridging into forgiveness so that we can actually surrender and let go of all that isn't us. Because what are we really doing? We're really just coming back to, who am I at that level of the God spark, of the creator of I am? And so, yeah, I may give it the verbiage of the inner work and healing and transformation, etc. For me, it's connecting and bridging back into yourself, finding that connection, that connecting points with consciousness that is at you, that's you at the high level, like you spoke about, that it's no longer searching, but it's becoming available, the human part becoming available too, and connecting in with soul. So how do we do this on a day-by-day basis? Because for me, I'm really big on the fact that my clients do not need me as a crutch. They should be able to navigate through the things that come up in a day-to-day basis. And so I'm big on giving them the tools, and the tools are really for the human to keep changing, transforming, healing stuff until they get to the point of, oh, wow, okay, I've got this. I may have had a wobble, but it's not going to take me off center. And so people can find me either through Facebook. I will say this, my website has got a lot of my healing stuff. It's soulfulness. I just was not ready to change it until this point of this birthing, of this level. So even that is just a point of surrender. There's been so much that's been changing and transforming, but I'm really active mostly on social media, Facebook. I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Inner Work Mastery, and I do a lot of teaching currently, so that not only am I giving my audience tools, I'm also, as they listen to the lessons, it's opening up of consciousness. It's just opening you up to a level of consciousness to consider. And that's what I would say. If you're in a space where none of this feels like, oh, I can't believe it, etc., just be open to it, because the seed gets planted, and we never know when it will bloom and blossom, etc. And everything has its own time as well. It can happen in an instant, or it may take a couple of months. That's the journey, and that for me is the beautiful journey. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can send me all your links and I'll pop it into wherever I need to place it when I share this. It's been such a joy to chat to you. It always is. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being you.
Thank you, Nikki. It was a wonderful conversation.
Sending you lots of love, and thank you to everybody who's listening. Lots of love.